welcome to another episode of Her Unmuted. Her Unmuted is a podcast dedicated to amplifying women's voices in healthcare, politics, education, and beyond. Our goal is to create a space where women can share their stories, challenges, and achievements openly and unapologetically.
Today, we are so excited to be joined by someone incredibly inspiring, Ella. Ella is a psychology student at McGill University, and she is also the founder of Ace Affirmations, which is a student led magazine and community platform that creates a safe, reliable space for young people, especially women, to share their experiences, offer advice, and feel less alone. Her work sits at the intersection of creativity, storytelling, and human connection, bringing together media, design, and emotional honesty to bring and build something truly meaningful. From leading editorial content and outreach to building a growing community rooted in belonging, Ella is redefining what it means to create space for youth voices. Ella, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so happy to have you. Just to get started on the first question, what inspired you to create Ace Affirmations? And was there a specific moment or experience that pushed you to build this platform?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And to answer that question, throughout high school, I sort of came up with this idea of ACE affirmations in one of my communication technology classes. And I wanted to create a digital magazine catered towards women to amplify women's voices and kind of showcase like the universal experience of being a teenager. And so I created that in high school. And then in university, coming from an all-girls school, I had kind of the space to learn with my peers and kind of be in an environment where I was surrounded by like-minded girls who were very like they had a lot going for them. They're very talented. And I kind of wanted to create a space in university where women could feel like they belonged and kind of created the similar community that I had in high school, but in university for built in Montreal for university students anywhere. And so that's why I decided to create this digital magazine and expand it to more of a digital platform and really kind of use social media to connect different female students everywhere.
That's amazing. I feel like our missions honestly kind of align because I don't know if we've mentioned this yet, but Ella's actually a Havergal alum. So like here
Yes.
at Havergal, like we have a really nice like community of women just supporting each other. And I think we have a lot of resources where we feel like we can really grow into like the person that we want to become without like any like societal like restrictions or limitations. And I think like just extending that community to like places beyond Havergal where many people may not be like privileged to also experience that same sort of education is just like so important.
I agree. And then I think for specifically ACE affirmations, I think all businesses start with a question. And my question was, where do girls feel they can go to feel like they belong? And I was kind of thinking about how social media is kind of a platform that people use negatively, but also can be used to connect everyone from like different universities. And I thought, well, why don't I create this digital magazine that is going to be launched soon, to sort of give advice to incoming students or just students in first year, second year who want to kind of feel like their experiences are being validated and they can relate, as well as an advice column for incoming students so they can kind of see what it's like to actually be in university completely unfiltered.
I love that. I love that. And I think like on the same vein, like I wanted to ask like what's one gap that you still like exists in our society today that prevents young women and girls from truly being themselves? Like you mentioned Ace Affirmations is really touching on that like unfiltered aspect. Like what do you think are some like taboo topics that women often like are afraid to talk about or there's just some like limitations on them?
For sure. I think that still there's kind of a taboo around talking about women and sort of their relationship with dating. I think that's a huge thing that goes kind of like people are very filtered in the way they talk about that because I think that that can kind of connect to identity and kind of when someone's trying to figure out who they are. And I think that a lot of times when women are in like the public eye, or like a lot of female influencers who are very young on TikTok or social media platforms, they really get scrutinized for kind of making the mistakes, dating who they date, having like their whole life kind of like judged because they are a young woman. And I think that's something that Ace kind of wants to kind of knock down, is that um like we don't want to judge. Like we want to stay, we want to like talk and kind of tell like our unfiltered thoughts, and we are not here to judge.
Also like we're just like what's one aspect that you think about like dating like could be talked about more? Like you said like specifically like how like many women like are getting scrutinized for it, but like what specifically do you want to dive deeper into that topic?
I think I want to dive deeper into women being scrutinized for saying their unfiltered thoughts, for saying what's on their mind, even if it's um like abrasive or something. Like if men say it, I think a lot of times they're seen as strategic, and it's like their thoughts are seen as very assertive and strategic. But a lot of times when women say their opinions and thoughts around maybe academics, around dating, around like any type of opinion, they could be seen as um like calculated and very like abrasive. And I think I kind of want to show like the emotion that we all experience as humans, and that it's not something to shy away from.
Mhm.
I totally agree. I feel like that double standard like exists in our society and it's so like so prevalent.
Exactly. And throughout this experience of like creating your whole creating affirmations, have you like experienced any challenges while building it, and what did you kind of learn from that experience, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. I think that there were a lot of challenges when building this platform. I think um to begin with, like the whole target demographic being women, and me having to kind of like on campus and stuff like that, like singling out like, hey, we want it to be like women who are represented in our social media and who are represented in our writers and everything, and not men. I think a lot of times there can be backlash with men who are like, hey, like this is like some feminist type of like social media platform that like we're not included in. There's a lot of kind of like backlash with that. And you like a lot of your viewers, even though our viewers are a lot of the times women, like there are a lot of men who do view our content. And I think you can get a lot of hate for that. I think if you are a strong woman who is kind of building something, a lot of times like you can get a lot of hate. But I think for me, my advice would just kind of be that you know the mission, and you know like why you're doing what you're doing, and if you just keep going and you don't let anyone like bring you down, I think like you can really make something successful.
It's so inspiring. I know, like I feel like in this society, like men tend to always be the ones who are backlashing against like women who are actually trying to like improve society and stand up for women's rights. And I think even though there are, of course, many who do recognize it, many may feel like women's rights is already like we're like in 2026, like what is there more to discuss about women's rights? They might think that like everything is already like perfect and our like gender rights are already like pretty equal. So I think like bringing that to attention is so important. And like I wanted to ask, like, have you ever received a message or story from someone in your community that really changed the way you saw the impact of your work, whether that may be like negative or positive?
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of messages from girls who sort of like I see on campus who are like, "Hey, I see what you're doing and I think it's great and I'm so excited and I want to be a part of this ACE community." Because for our magazine, we're trying to build this magazine with you guys, for you guys. We don't want to be any type of like like we don't want there to be any type of superiority. We already have creators like Madeline RG, Emma Chamberlain, who are sort of like those public figures who have those podcasts and have those magazines. But we want to sort of create like a type of relatability where it's just like we're all students trying to build something all together and create this big community all together. And it takes, it's not just one person, it takes like a whole entire team and it takes everyone. And I'd say kind of getting the feedback of like we love what you're doing and like it's very inspiring, keep at it. I think those little things mean more than like kind of one big entire compliment. It's like the little type of um like feedback from every single person.
I love that. And also, like, since this is like your first year university right now as well, like, could you tell us about some of like your experiences, like personal experiences transitioning from high school to university? Like, what has it been like for you? And like, tell us more about those like unfiltered like thoughts that you're saying earlier.
For sure. I'd say that for me, the transition, um, it was very rocky at the start. I think that everyone says, oh, you need to find your friends in the first week of university. You need like to make sure you like make Frosh or O week or like the beginning where everyone kind of meets like the best week ever and you put your best foot forward, be super social. But if I'm being completely honest, the people that I met in first week and second week I didn't stay friends with. Those weren't my good friends that I actually have to this day. And I think honestly, it's like to do with you're going to meet so many new people and you don't want to rush into kind of making friends or like like going into a friend group just because you want to kind of like have a safe like the safety of like certain friends. I think like there's so much opportunity to meet so many people and I think like you'll for sure find your people and if that's not at the beginning of the year like it's very rare for it to be at the beginning of the year. So I'd say that was like an adjustment and I'd say academically, you're moved into bigger lectures. It's very independent, it's very one-on-one. Like you're going to have to kind of like go to TA office hours or like you have to be very self-sufficient. And I think honestly, like that adjustment, um, that was kind of like it's on your own terms, and I kind of also had to adjust to that. And not a lot of people talk about um how like people like fail a lot in university. They fail a lot of tests, and it's super common to get bad grades. And I think for me, it was kind of shell shock because I always wanted to do very well, but I think that's just kind of the process, and you learn so much.
Yeah, I think we heard that from like our stats teacher. Like, remember when she said that like people who usually get 90s in um like high school, they get like 70s or 80s in like
Yeah,
It's
a
like
really
achieving
change.
students like who wanted to get like 90s. I think like they find that like just like passing the class is already like an
yeah,
achievement itself.
exactly.
And I feel like that's so different from high school because like well as someone who's in grade 11 right now, like I feel like we have so many like expectations for what uni is going to be like. And like we hear so many different stories. Like some people either love their first years or they hate
Yeah.
it. Like, I hear so
Mhm.
many different stories and I'm like I get kind of scared because like you honestly like have no idea like what to expect because it could go like so many different paths for you.
But
Mhm.
honestly, I'd say like you can totally make it the experience how you want to make it.
Mhm.
There's so much opportunity when you're in university and like
Yeah.
the whole a lot of things that people like don't talk about is the independence of it all is that you're on your own and you and that's like there's kind of a beauty in that is that no one is relying on you and you have to rely on yourself. So you kind of discover so much and you learn so much. You make a lot of mistakes, but that's sort of the beauty in it is that when you make the mistakes, like you always like can come back to yourself and you just like learn a lot. So I'd say like to anyone who's watching this who is like in high school, like university is such an exciting time. So allow yourself to kind of make those mistakes and explore who you are. And a lot of people think that they need to figure out who they are before university in high school, but university, everyone's figuring out who they are.
That's so comforting to hear. I mean, like you're a Havergal alum, obviously. Like I think Havergal is like a space where they provide so many like opportunities and also resources to really support its students. Like, how do you think that transition specifically has been for you? Like coming from a place that you're always like filled with teachers that are
Mhm.
truly working in your best interest. And I can imagine uni being like so much more like, as you mentioned, like you require so much more independence and just like your own self like learning and guidance.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like you said, coming from a place that offered so much support in university, like you are your support system, right? So I think sort of my biggest tip is kind of like having your own back. Like you don't have the people that like would you could fall back on. You can only fall back on yourself. So I just say you're going to inevitably make those mistakes and mess up. But when you do, you just have to get back up and you have to sort of like continue being independent and continue being self-sufficient. And it's such a learning process, and everyone has to figure out what works best for them. For me, what I do is I love to use kind of Google Calendar. I love to use like lists, and I'm big on like timers because sometimes I'm not even looking at the list and I need like the audio like to kind of remind me. And I say for me, like with like deadlines and everything, setting timers actually is like a really good way to stay on top of everything.
Kind of going back to like Ace Affirmations, I think that one thing that really stands out about your platform is that it's not just a platform, but it's kind of like a community that you've created.
Mhm.
So, kind of like looking ahead, um, if it could like evolve into anything in the future, like for example, like a company or like a larger like media brand, what would your vision for Ace Affirmations be?
Well, actually, something that we're currently working on that we're really hoping to get solidified during the summer for next year is
Mhm.
we are building an app. Um, I have an
Oh,
extremely talented um, developer right now, sort of on that process, and I think right now, like that's kind of the route we want to go because we have like a website and like everything, but in a social media platform, but we want everything to kind of like blend together and we want it to be sort of like very useful for everyone. So we're thinking um, we're trying to build an app. And then we're also going to host events in Montreal. Um, Still building on the fact that we want to create a community, whether that be little cafes, journaling times, like Pilates, like we all want to kind of create that community through events and through still our digital platform.
That's so exciting. Oh my God, like when are you expecting this app to be released?
Well, hopefully we're gonna release it next year at the beginning of the year. We're still sort of developing it and kind of just it's such a long process, but we've been having this idea for a year now, and so we're just very excited for that to come out. And right now I'm also very excited for the volume of the magazine to launch. And I think it's the perfect time to launch. It's launching at the beginning of April, and it's really directed towards students in high school who kind of want that advice and want that unfiltered experiences like to be shown.
and going back to the app, like what do you think would be like the main function of the app for like users?
Well, this is actually unfortunately I can't say
Oh,
uh,
okay.
because it's going to be a surprise, but I would say that it could be used very like broadly for different people, and there's different functions of the app. It's not just like it's like different sections, so um, it's coming soon.
Well, we're
Okay.
so excited for this app to come out, and when it does, we'll definitely like test it out. We'll definitely use
Yeah,
it once.
sure.
So keep us updated when that's going to be released. And I just wanted to go back to something that we are actually talking about earlier. So you said like university is often like framed as like this pressure to like find yourself and like not only for like rising seniors who are going into universities, but also like first years. But like what parts of ourselves do you think that women are actually like forced to like suppress like during this phase that they feel like they have to like hide?
I would say that I think we are always ridiculed for showing emotion, and showing like anger and frustration and lashing out. But I'd say that like at Ace, we welcome the frustration, we welcome the confusion, whether it be through our confessions where we can kind of just rant and share stories, or whether it be just kind of like just saying our plain opinions. I think that oftentimes like women feelings and emotions are suppressed because we don't want to seem like we're acting out, because men usually ridicule that. But I think for Ace, we kind of want to amplify those voices because those it is important. And in psychology, we learned that when you do feel those emotions, it's a trigger. It's telling you that something isn't okay and that like it's like a sign. And I don't think we should ignore those signs. And I think oftentimes we're told to ignore those signs, but that's just genuinely how like a part of us.
And kind of like going back to what you said about like the whole purpose of ACE affirmations to offer advice, like what would you kind of say, like how how does modern dating culture impact a woman's sense of self-worth, like especially during like times like when you're in university or in high school?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that right now in the modern dating times, we've sort of like reverted to um more hookup culture, for example, and less like taking on
Mhm.
dates and like stuff like that. And I think in university, hookup culture is even more amplified because there's residences, um, and you don't really have a lot of times there's not really taking the person on dates because you are all in a res, so it's sort of um that's kind of the culture, right? And it's like camp, you could think about it at the beginning, and that's kind of scary. Where like there's so many people, so many hormones and emotions all in one building, in one school. But honestly, I think the difference between the transition of high school versus university is that it is much bigger. And in high school, everyone sort of knows your business and sort of knows kind of who you're dating and who you're talking to. But I think in university, a plus of it is that no one really knows anything and no one has to because it's so big. And even though a lot of times hookup culture can be amplified, um, I think it's whatever you make of the experience because everyone is different. And in university, you're going to meet so many different types of people. So you'll for sure find someone who kind of has your same dating values.
Mhm.
And I think for women, especially, like, kind of not to have the pressure of what other people are saying and kind of just to do what you want as a person.
Exactly. Mhm. I love that.
No, yeah. I mean, I feel like in society right now, hookup culture is definitely like so amplified. It's kind of like sad to see, honestly, because it's like where did all like the romance go in our society? I feel like it's like romance is so dead nowadays, and it's honestly like such an issue. And so I wanted to ask, like, what are some normalized behaviors in relationships that you believe are actually harmful but go unquestioned and are kind of just like the norm now, but you don't think they should be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think sort of a normalized behavior could be um, that there isn't a first date a lot of the times, and it's just sort of okay, like come over to residence and like we'll hang out, and it's not really sort of that type of thing, as well as that I think like a lot of times physical intimacy comes before emotional intimacy. And I think that um, for me, I think like for everyone, I would never judge anything anyone would ever do. And I think that everything is everyone else's choices. But to like answer that question, I think that it's just so normal to kind of skip to the physical intimacy and not really understand the person emotionally. And I think it never used to be like that. And in a way, I think for women specifically, because there's such a sort of idea around like our bodies and kind of like stuff like that, I think that um, a lot of times it could be harmful depending on your mentality.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, I feel like for us, like, it's so hard to like navigate these relationships because we often like don't have like someone to tell us like exactly like how to like handle these
Yeah.
situations. I think this is relatable for many high school students who might be listening to this podcast right now, or even uni students. I think that for many like ambitious women, we often like find that it's difficult to balance romantic relationships while also still pursuing our goals. Like I feel like
For
these
sure.
things they often like they're very conflicting because they both require so much of your time and it's just really hard to balance both of these like goals and aspects of our lives. Like, what advice do you have like for people who want to balance them? Like, what are your opinions on this?
I honestly think that's a really good question. I think that like in university, dating and kind of like meeting people is such a big part of it. And I think you do have those aspirations and goals. Like for me, building Ace took a lot of time, and it took a lot of sort of like external um time from like not my schoolwork. Like I had to really put a lot of like time and effort into it, and I think that a lot of times like you can be so wrapped up in your ambitions that you forget that there's a whole part of the other of like a world of meeting a bunch of people and getting to know people. And I think in first year you should for sure take advantage of the fact that you're meeting so many people and kind of just to experience that, because I think experiencing dating is very, very important and can also tell you a lot about yourself and how you relate to like another person and how you navigate. It can teach you a lot about like attachment styles and kind of like how you are in a relationship. And so I'd say that it is actually a very like important factor that I think everyone should take advantage of. And I think even though you can be a very ambitious woman, you could also have time to fulfill other aspirations in other types of things in your life. And I think a movie that kind of really encapsulates this is Little Women, where I think all of the children kind of had different dreams, but they were all very valid. So I think it is valid for a businesswoman to want to find love, to want to date. I think women can do it all. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be just women wanting to find love and being and dating around, or women wanting to like climb the corporate ladder. I think you can do both.
Yeah, and I think there's often this like unspoken pressure for young women to be perfect, like both like academically, socially, and personally,
Hmm.
which can make it really hard to be like fully authentic. So, I was wondering, like, kind of like in general, like for students, especially like girls who might be at Havergal or at university who might be struggling with like their own identity or feeling alone, like, what's one piece of advice you would give to them?
I would say that there's so many things that could make up your identity. For me, in high school, I was a volleyball player, and so a lot of the times I tied my worth down to athletics. Like, but then I wasn't as good as the other people who could play. So then I was like, without athletics, who am I? I'm not necessarily super athletic. I'm not super artsy. I'm not super, super academic. And I sort of had the idea of, okay, like if I'm not one of those things, what is my niche? Who am I? But I think there's kind of a greatness in doing a little bit of everything. And you don't need to necessarily have a niche and be the athletic one, for example. There's so much about like, there's so much to someone's identity. And I think you don't have to be perfect at one thing. I think explore as much as possible, try different things, and like I think women owe it to themselves to like explore everything and not have to sort of fit a mold of excellence, and to have those mistakes and to not be perfect at everything when you first try it. And so I'd say that like for me personally, um when it comes to your identity, you're always figuring it out. You're always going to constantly be figuring it out. But especially in university, but I just say just like embrace kind of the not knowing and just try as many things as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I really loved how you said that you don't have to have everything figured out at once, or you don't have to be like perfect at one thing, because like you should allow yourself to try like different things or like explore different paths.
For sure.
No, I totally agree. I mean, like, as someone who's also like fallen trapped to that, oh my God, like you have to find your own niche. And like right now in high schools, there's so much pressure to like find your passion and just like find the one thing that you're good at and makes you stand apart from someone else. It's so it's so much pressure, I think, to put on someone who's like still growing. And it's so important that we give ourselves that leniency and understand that like as humans and as like women, we shouldn't be defined as one thing. Like it's
For
okay
sure.
if you're not like the best at one thing. Like you don't need to like find that until like much later. And I think there's like being being so diverse and also just like having that flexibility to like learn more about yourself as well.
Yeah, I think it's very limiting for a woman to kind of put that type of label on them and being like, okay, like I'll be the best athlete as possible or I'll be the most academic person, because we deserve to kind of try so many different things and not put that limitation on us. Um, because when I quit volleyball, I picked up photography, and if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have had Ace because I wouldn't have discovered that I actually do like creative things and I like digital design, and I would have never tapped into that element if I never quit volleyball.
Yeah, I really relate to that because I used to think all my worth was defined by like one thing, which was my sport as well. Like I used to do fencing, but and I used to like think that everything was tied to my results, but in my rankings and how well I performed. But kind of after like stepping away from it, I realized how like kind of limiting that mindset was and how there's so much more to one person than just their achievements or like just how they performed athletically. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, sort of to just wrap this entire interview up, as you know, like the name of our podcast is Her Unmuted. So I want to ask you, like, what being unmuted means to you.
Yeah, I think being unmuted is sort of like really aligns with also like Ace. So I think it all aligns very well. But I think unmuted to me means being allowed to ask the uncomfortable questions and being allowed to like speak freely and unfilteredly, whether that be about um, views on like politics, like opinions and stuff like that, or whether that be on like the minuscule scale of kind of just like how you're feeling and expressing like your emotions and like your personal experiences. I think like that doesn't have to be muted, that can be unmuted and um sort of like being able to be uncomfortable. Like I think there's a beauty in like saying things that you're not necessarily comfortable saying, but you know it is like the hard truth. And I think more we need to kind of urge other people around us to kind of say what's uncomfortable in order to kind of get like the real answers.
Totally agree. Well, thank you so much, Ella, for being on this podcast episode of Her Unmuted. We're so grateful to have you here and to connect with you because I don't think we ever got a chance to speak back when we were both in Havergal. So it was so lovely to meet you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love everything that you're doing. I think you guys are so inspiring, and I think you guys, if you need anything, let me know.
Of course. Thank you so much. That means a lot.